In the silence of the moment, there is something always stirring beneath the shell of peace. Those who try to find the way back to the breath often discover that the quiet surface is only a thin screen covering countless rough movements underneath. A few people see sticks, stones, and thorns not in their hands or under their feet, but within the very wrestling flow of the mind. They are not harmless, impermanent metaphors. They are echoes of forces that are pulling the mind out of stability. It is fascinating to think that with just a clear set of instructions, a graded roadmap, or a few sequential steps, the mind will automatically open up and fall into stillness. But those steps only have meaning when the mind is soft enough to listen. Most of the time, the mind refuses to stand still. It resists, it spins, and it creates waves of its own before the practitioner can even realize what is happening. Stillness seems like the starting point, but it is often the very last thing to be achieved. Instead of waiting for peace to arrive first, the path requires entering into disorder from the very beginning. There is no way to evade what is obstructing the settling of the mind. What causes instability does not lie out there. Rather, it is within the process of recognition. Only by facing it directly can the practitioner clearly see the structure of fluctuation, the sensations within the body, and the flow of thoughts in the mind, layers of tension as small yet as sharp as shards of glass. Amidst that vast chaos, one truth stands out. Concentration requires clarity, and clarity requires an ability to look straight at the unpleasant. One cannot expect concentration to function like an unfeeling machine, operating independently of the internal state. When there is desire, anger, or fear, the practitioner cannot pretend they are not real. Every time one tries to push them into a dark corner, they resurface even stronger, as if nourished by that very avoidance. There are no shortcuts, and there is no place to hide what is arising. The only thing that can be done is to look deeply into them without avoidance, without coloring, and without judgment. When peering into the weaknesses of that type of thinking, the practitioner begins to see cracks in their structure. They often come with such great power that they seem irresistible, like a belligerent person using aggression to cover the void in their logic. But when listening long enough, each of those layers of power begins to detach, revealing their hollowness. A strange thing happens at the moment the mind truly listens. Those screams no longer create meaning. What once seemed too large turns into something trivial. The pressure that used to weigh down turns out to be so irrational, it is incomprehensible. Seeing that meaninglessness, the practitioner can set them aside without force. If they return, the mind is awake enough to respond. It no longer holds weight. The similarity between psychological pain and physical pain is evident in this process. There are times when the body hurts not because of the posture, but because of the sharp tension within the way of breathing itself. When sitting in meditation, some discover that the pain exists regardless of how they adjust their posture. At that point, instead of resisting, the practitioner needs to find a pleasant area in the body, a small patch of relaxation. That spot is like a beach in the present, a place where one can stand firmly for a moment to observe the pain without being swept away. From that steady vantage point, the breath can spread into the contracting areas. The breath does not try to erase the pain or deny it, but softens the space around it. As the breath moves through the stiff areas and flows out to the limbs, the practitioner begins to realize an important thing. The thorns in the present are not a fixed truth. A part of the meditator themselves is creating the conditions for them to exist. This realization opens a new depth in observation. The present moment is not a gift handed down from the outside. It is the result of participation within the pain. The practitioner realizes they are adding layers of tension, erecting a protective shell to prevent it from spreading. But that very shell is where the pain resides and persists. The breath energy is blocked, no longer flowing smoothly. And that is exactly what maintains the pain. When seeing that a part of the painful experience originates from oneself, the practitioner begins to have the ability to dismantle it, no longer just a sufferer, but an observer with the power of choice. What seemed unchangeable begins to soften when the involvement changes. And from here, that principle can be brought into deeper regions, the regions of the mind, because similar to physical pain, desire, and anger, fear does not just come from past habits. They exist because a part of the mind is participating in them right now. One part of the mind takes pleasure and desire. Another part suffers because of it. One part immerses itself in anger, while another is burned by the ashes of that anger. But in culture, not following desire is often seen as suppression. Therefore, the healthy part of the mind that wants to escape desire is locked in the basement, while the part that escalates craving is let loose. Only when peering into the part that is enjoying the desire, asking it what that joy is, how the tension accompanies it, and what gloominess ripples through the mind when desire operates, can the practitioner highlight the part that wants to end it. When that part is elevated, desire loses its power. The same happens with anger and fear. Only when seeing the pettiness of the joy within anger does its attraction vanish. When the meditator realizes this two-way participation, a silent door opens. They no longer see emotions merely as random waves washing in. They begin to see the invisible hand of intention busily stirring the lake of the mind, and at that very moment, observation becomes sharper. The mind no longer drifts to the shore only to be swept away again, but gradually stands firm amidst its own subtle movements. At a deeper level, this insight reveals a paradox. Pain and insecurity are not givens. They are products of the cooperation between old habits and new maintenance. Each breath that retains tension, each thought that nourishes an old state, contributes to creating the very thing the practitioner wants to overcome. When this is understood, internal responsibility no longer carries the tone of a burden but becomes a form of freedom that is elusive but very real. If the present moment is partially formed by oneself, then right here, the practitioner has the right to change the part they contribute to it. From that perspective, the meditation experience is no longer just enduring or waiting. It becomes a direct encounter between the observer and the movements that create the present. This sharpness leads to a new capacity, seeing the very part of the mind participating in the instability. In desire, there is a part of the mind enjoying it, wanting to prolong that state, holding the reins without realizing that its consequence is the hidden dissatisfaction behind the feeling of pleasure. In anger, there is a part of the mind enjoying the temporary power that the emotion brings, even though deep down that is just a meager, fragile form of happiness. In fear, there is a part of the mind driven by exaggerated images, seemingly protective, but actually maintaining the trembling, recognizing that enjoying part is not for condemnation but for deconstruction. When the light of seeing shines upon it, the part of the mind that does not want to participate begins to grow stronger. It is no longer locked in the basement of suppression, but becomes a force with a voice. That force speaks with a quiet but steady voice. There is suffering here. The voice does not strain or shout slogans. It only states the truth, and that very truth dissolves the power of the emotions that once dominated. The practitioner does not argue with desire, does not fight with anger, and does not run from fear, just letting the part of the mind clearly see the lack of logic and the meaninglessness of those movements causes them to weaken on their own. The breath now plays the role of an underground current carrying clarity into places previously neglected. The breath is not a special tool but a place where the mind can latch onto when waves rise. In that place, the practitioner finds a beach in the present, where they are no longer pushed back and forth by emotions but can slowly let go of each layer of tension. This feeling is not an escape from reality. On the contrary, it is pure contact with reality without interfering through old habits. In that purity, the practitioner begins to see more clearly that every development in the mind involves an element called intention. Intention is not a powerful decision but a very small, almost invisible tilt that makes the mind lean toward a certain state. Just a slight tilt toward fear, and the mind immediately falls into a whirlpool of imagination. Just a slight tilt toward anger, and the breath immediately becomes heavy. Just a slight tilt toward desire, and the gaze is immediately covered by a layer of color that is no longer honest. When seeing this participating factor, the practitioner has the ability to withdraw that tilt not by forcing the mind to return, but by letting the mind itself realize the exhaustion that those other states cause. Another profound thing is revealed. The mind can only be stable when it no longer secretly maintains what makes it unstable. Every pain, every bout of fear, every wave of dissatisfaction needs a form of energy to keep it existing. When one stops providing that energy, those states gradually lose their footing, and so, stability is no longer the result of strained effort but comes from ceasing to create more turmoil. Just as when the practitioner lets go of the shell of tension around pain, the breath becomes clear. Energy flows through the painful area more easily. The pain does not necessarily disappear, but it is no longer imprisoned in the tight chest of reactive habits. This change clears the way for the ability to see more clearly, seeing clearly not just the pain or emotion, but seeing clearly the entire process that creates them. The mind becomes like a craftsman who thoroughly understands every stage of creating an object, and because of understanding, one can adjust. When the stones and thorns in the present are seen for their true nature, that they are partially formed by oneself, the mind gradually gains a firmer standing ground, not because circumstances have changed, but because the practitioner is no longer accidentally cooperating with what makes them insecure. Thanks to this, the ability to stabilize and maintain a stable state becomes clearer. The mind no longer jumps at every small vibration, no longer thinks that pain is an enemy or that emotion is an invincible force. What used to be attackers are now only phenomena observed from that foundation. From there, the meditator begins to enter a different kind of wisdom. The wisdom that sees the present can always be shaped, not by brute will but by changing the way of participating in it. A skillful, subtle participation that makes every second lighter, clearer, and less dominated by ignorant habits. With this skillfulness, the practitioner is no longer a victim of experience. They become the one who is present, not chasing, not being swept away, not pushing back. That presence is the foundation to go further on the path of liberation. When one has seen how the mind participates in its own disorders, a new process begins to reveal itself. The process of identifying both the familiar and the strange aspects within the inner self. The unconscious flows that have operated for so long now become distinct. In every moment, two tendencies coexist. The tendency to cling to what causes suffering and the tendency to want to escape it. Only when the light of observation is strong enough does this separation emerge. Here, the text provides a key point. A part of the mind is enjoying the thing that makes it suffer, not enjoyment in the conventional sense, but a familiar participation, like someone holding a sharp object even though they know it can wound them. Regarding desire, this part of the mind clings to the fleeting attraction, creating a form of fragile pleasure yet strong enough to persist. With anger, it embraces the fire because it believes that explosion is a form of power. With fear, it thinks that trembling is a form of vigilance. Only when looking straight at that enjoying part of the mind can the practitioner see its true nature. The text suggests that when asking what kind of joy is this, and what is accompanying it, the truth begins to surface. Under this light, that tiny joy is stripped of the seductive form it draped over itself. What remains is a meager and wretched happiness, both short-lived and unstable. When that is seen, the part of the mind that does not want to participate, which has been silent for so long, begins to find its footing. This part yearns for liberation, for lightness, for not being swept away. Previously, it was pushed into a dark corner by the prejudice that resisting desire is suppression. But now, under the light of wisdom, that part becomes the strongest ally. This opens up a mechanism of transformation, emphasizing the part of the mind that does not want to participate, not through coercion but through clarification. When seeing the suffering that accompanies desire, seeing the emptiness after anger, seeing the hurried breath in fear, the part of the mind that wants to leave becomes stronger. It stands tall not because it was trained through theory, but because it has seen the truth for itself. Thanks to this change, the mind has the ability to stand in the position of an observer without being dragged into the battlefield. Amidst the rough movements, the practitioner can still touch a small point of peace in the mind, similar to a safe standing ground in the breath. From that place, one can see anger growing like a cloud, or fear spreading like thin smoke without identifying oneself with them. The body at this time also reflects the same thing. The text emphasizes that sometimes pain exists not because of the posture but because the way the practitioner breathes is maintaining it. The tightness around the painful area is like an invisible belt that prevents the breath from passing through. At that moment, the body is held in a closed state, causing the pain to be nourished a layer of tension to prevent it from spreading. But that very layer of tension locks in all healing movements. Realizing this is the first form of liberation. It shows that the present is not fixed. Every moment is the result of a relationship between body and mind, between habit and intention. The practitioner no longer asks why this is happening to them, but begins to look in another direction. How am I contributing to what is taking place? That question does not carry blame but mindfulness. For when one knows they have a role in that process, they also know they have the ability to change. There is no need to change through internal violence, but by softening what is being tightly held. From here, the operating principle of the body is extended to the operation of the mind. Just as physical pain is maintained by tension and the way of breathing, emotions are also maintained by the response right and the present. When no longer participating, or rather, when changing the way of participating, that emotional structure loses its foundation. This is not avoidance or repression. On the contrary, it requires direct confrontation. The practitioner needs to look straight at the participating part of the mind. Whether it is desire, anger, or fear, look to see. This only continues because I am fueling it right now. When this is noticed, a subtle but powerful shift occurs. The mind begins to withdraw itself from the old way of participating, no longer adding oil to the fire of anger, no longer prolonging the vortex of fear, no longer driving the thirst to be satisfied. The mind becomes lighter, not because the negative states disappear immediately, but because the practitioner is no longer the source of their nourishment. That moment is like letting go of a heavy object held for too long. The body does not recover instantly, but the tension and exhaustion decrease markedly. The mind is the same. When withdrawing participation, it opens up a space for the breath to spread, for wisdom to see through, for peace to have a place to rest. And in that space, a profound realization emerges. The present is not something obvious. It is the result of countless small decisions, countless beliefs, and unconscious reactions. Each time observing without being pulled away, the practitioner sees more clearly their own role in creating the experience. And when seeing clearly, the mind becomes steadier, less wavering by what happens. From that steadiness, the ability to stabilize the mind develops not by freezing emotions, but through flexibility, knowing when energy is flowing in the wrong direction, knowing when the breath is being held back, knowing when the mind is nourishing what causes suffering, and when one knows, one can stop, dismantle, and loosen. This is the beginning of a profound skill, understanding how one shapes the present, not to create a pleasant present through subjective will, but to open up a space for clarity. That space is the prerequisite for true stillness, a stillness not cracked by the flow of desire, anger, or fear. When the mind begins to withdraw its participation with states that cause suffering, an interesting thing happens. Positive states that were previously faint begin to have room to express themselves. This faintness was not because they were weak, but because they had long been overshadowed by familiar reactions, like the light of a small lamp that cannot be seen amidst chaos. But in the silent space, that light becomes clear. At this point, the text points out an important principle. If in negative states there is a part of the mind that does not want to participate, then in positive states there is also a part of the mind that does not want to stay. And if one does not see that part, the practitioner will not be able to develop the necessary steadiness to maintain concentration. The truth is that when the mind becomes quieter, some other parts of it feel inconvenienced. Those parts are used to distraction, used to chasing stimulation, used to the fast pace of emotional surges. Therefore, they react with restlessness and impatience, even a sense of emptiness when the breath becomes light. They are not enemies, but simply the leftovers of old habits. Therefore, the text suggests a very soft approach. Find the part of the mind that treasures the opportunity to be stable, the part that wants to let go of the burden, the part that feels the ease in the breath. That part has always existed, but is often covered by stronger movements. When the practitioner highlights it, stability becomes more natural, like a seed brought into the light. In this process, self-encouragement becomes an essential skill, not encouraging through slogans or empty promises, but through very sincere acknowledgement. The mind has just returned. That means it has the capacity to return. Let's see if it can do it one more time, and lighter than the last. These words of self-encouragement are not said just to sound good. They are based on direct verification, on the direct experience that the mind can return many times, and each return is a time when internal strength is consolidated. A person who is quick to get discouraged is one who has not yet learned to see those small but important achievements. In the internal environment, small achievements are never small. Each time the mind returns is a shift away from dispersion. Each time the mind quiets down a little is a time a dose of insecurity is unloaded. And each time the mind recognizes the ease of the breath is a time it sees that peace is not a luxury. Thus, the text emphasizes that concentration is nourished by highlighting the positive. When the practitioner learns how to clearly see the good qualities that are budding, however small, they become stronger. This is not due to illusion but to a very natural principle. Whatever is observed with appreciation grows. When the mind knows how to encourage itself, it becomes less passive before circumstances. It no longer sees itself as a victim of what happens. Instead, it sees its proactive power in shaping the present experience, not shaping it through stressful control, but through mindful presence. And this is a key transition. The mind begins to take on a powerful and active role in shaping its own experience. The practitioner does not wait for the present to become pleasant before dwelling in it, but adjusts their own participation so that the present becomes clearer. But the text does not stop there. It mentions an ultimate goal. Eventually, the meditator wants to stop participating in the present to open their heart to another level of freedom, a state the text calls deathless immortality. This is not the destruction of the self, but the ability to no longer have to constantly create experience through intention. However, to reach that, one cannot skip the intermediate stages. One cannot move straight from clumsy participation to total letting go. One must go through the process of learning how to participate skillfully. This includes the way of breathing without tightening the body, the way of bringing the mind back without forcing, the way of identifying states that appear without being swept in, the way of letting go at the right time and holding at the right level. The practitioner needs to become a good manager of the present moment, not through possession, but through alertness in every tiny decision. When this matures, the mind can go deeper. It can see the entire process of that participation as it happens. It can see both where it begins and where it ends. When sitting to meditate, the text reminds the practitioner to remember one important thing. Not everything in the present is fixed. Sharp sensations like stones and thorns are not entirely objective truths. A part of them comes from the practitioner's own participation. If that participation is conditioned by old habits, the present becomes a burden. But if the practitioner sees the part where they are making the present heavy and knows how to stop, the present lightens. When it lightens, the breath becomes unobstructed. When the breath is unobstructed, the mind has the ability to see more clearly. And when seeing more clearly, the skills to face the present also become sharper. Each time like this, the present becomes an open space, not a battlefield. The stones, the thorns, the fragments of insecurity are no longer attacking forces. They are only signs of unskillful participation. When the mind no longer fuels them, they become phenomena, as light as clouds, no longer threatening, no longer obscuring the vision. In this roadmap, stability does not come from forced effort, but from the ripening of wisdom. The practitioner no longer seeks to fix every emotion, but learns to see their operating process. When seen, the mind naturally becomes calm, and that very calmness is the foundation to go deeper into the path of liberation, where one is no longer bound by old reactions, nor needs to cling to new states. Practice reaching this stage begins to reveal a subtle movement within. The practitioner no longer just observes what is happening, but begins to see clearly the impact of each small decision in every moment. If before the mind was like a traveler amidst the waves of emotion, now it is like someone standing on the shore seeing the entire flow. This state is not the result of strained effort, but a natural consequence of understanding that the present always involves oneself. When this is understood deeply enough, the mind becomes lighter. It no longer sees fluctuations as enemies, but sees them as signs indicating where one is accidentally fueling insecurity. In this clarity, the text provides an important principle. To reach true stillness, the practitioner must know how to stop participating in the present, not leaving the present, but not adding to it any push, pull, or reaction. It is the state of no longer placing further intention into the moment that is unfolding, but to reach that capacity requires an essential stage. Before letting go of clumsy participation, one must learn skillful participation. The practitioner wants to abandon the wrong way of participating, but cannot bypass the training process to gain subtlety in every movement of the mind. This is the bridge between daily practice and the ability to experience deeper levels of liberation. When the mind's energy no longer runs after desire, anger, or fear, it begins to settle. But that settling is not the final destination. It is only the foundation for the mind to see more clearly the subtle movements, small changes in the breath, slight tension points in the body, thoughts flitting by so fast they are almost invisible. In every such detail, the practitioner learns to recognize the level of participation they are imposing on the moment. The clearest example lies in the breath. When the mind gives rise to a desire to control the breath excessively, the body immediately reacts with tightness. and the breath loses its naturalness. But when the practitioner simply observes the breath as it passes, feeling its own inherent ease, the breath becomes soft and free. Right there, one can see the difference between interference and presence. One side is effort, the other is letting go gently. This flow of energy opens up another understanding. The stones and thorns that once made it hard for the mind to stabilize were not entirely created by circumstances. A part came from the practitioner themselves tightening up, resisting, or wanting to eliminate them too quickly. At that moment, the mind participates in the discomfort by creating more tension on it, making it sharper and heavier. When this is seen, the practitioner begins to know how to stop before creating more turmoil. Not stopping by forcing, but by feeling how the breath is moving, seeing which part of the body is holding energy, seeing which part of the mind is creating the push. In that feeling, there is the ability to let go, a letting go that is not neglecting, but not adding to what is happening. The text emphasizes that when the practitioner no longer fuels it, the thorns of the present become much easier to handle. This is not logic but a direct experience. When the breath is allowed to flow through the painful area without encountering a barrier of tension, the pain no longer takes such deep root as before. The same happens with emotions. When one does not add extra layers of thought to a state of discomfort, that emotion quickly reveals its fragile nature. In this state, the mind is no longer a passive subject before circumstances. It becomes a subtle manager of every moment, knowing when to lighten up, knowing when one is accidentally tightening, knowing when to let the breath do its own work. This is the point the text wants to emphasize. To go further on the path of liberation, the practitioner must master this management ability, not management through control, but through skillfulness in participation. When that skillfulness matures, the mind can see the entire process of participation from the beginning to the end without being swept into the intermediate movements. It is noteworthy that this change does not put the mind into a passive state. On the contrary, it makes the mind more flexible, more sensitive to what is happening. When not confused by familiar reactions, the mind can see what was previously obscured: small shifts in sensation, fast glancing thoughts, slight redirects of intention. From that agility, a deeper direction begins to open. The practitioner realizes that every moment has an element of intention. This intention can be coarse or very subtle, but it always contributes to shaping the experience. When that intention becomes gentle, not pulled by habit or reaction, the mind moves closer to natural stillness. In this state, what used to cause discomfort begins to lose its power, not because the practitioner has overcome them through logic or effort, but because they are no longer being nourished. And when they are not nourished, they fade away. This is the first step toward the ability to stop participating entirely, a capacity that only appears when the mind has become proficient in recognizing and adjusting its own participation. From the subtlety of observing every small movement in the mind, another realization slowly forms. The ability to face the present is not an innate capacity, nor a gift that suddenly appears. It must be cultivated through countless repeated moments where the practitioner learns to adjust their level of participation, and this very process opens the foundation to step into deeper levels of liberation. The text clearly shows that before the mind can open to the deepest state, the deathless state, it must be trained to become a good manager of the present moment. This is not general advice but a very practical operating principle. For if the mind does not yet know how to participate skillfully in every breath, every sensation, every thought, how can it let go of all that participation when necessary? To clarify this, the text leads the reader back to what seems simplest. How is the breath happening? Is the body tightening? Is the mind trying to resist a sensation or trying to push a thought away? These seemingly small observations are where the mind learns skillfulness. In each observation, the practitioner can recognize what they are adding to the present. It could be a small tensioner on a painful area, a slight push to make the breath stronger, or the waiting for a pleasant moment to arrive. All those movements are forms of participation. When those are seen, the practitioner begins to know how to stop, take a step back, and not let familiar reactions automatically take control. As this capacity develops, the things that once made the mind waver become less powerful, not because the practitioner has overcome them with knowledge, but because those states are no longer fueled, no longer tightening to hold pain in. The pain becomes softer, no longer pushing the breath becomes free, no longer nourishing anger with old stories, the anger becomes thin like a layer of smoke. Even the stones and thorns that once made the meditator suffer begin to lose their sharp shapes, not because they are eliminated, but because the practitioner no longer sharpens them with their own reactions. When the mind does not create more edges, the present becomes rounder and lighter. From here, the text opens a deeper understanding. The stability the practitioner seeks is not a state of immobility. It is not a rigid stillness, but a form of vivid flexibility. That flexibility comes from the mind no longer being pushed by automatic reactions, but still being sensitive to every movement of the present. The practitioner can feel the breath running through, feel the painful area softening, feel the return of a thought without being swept away by it. In that recognition, each moment does not become a burden but an opportunity to see more clearly how the mind operates. Thanks to this clarity, the mind is no longer deceived by strong sensations. It no longer sees pleasure as a permanent refuge or discomfort as an enemy. When a pleasant sensation comes, the mind knows that pleasure is only a part of the flow. When discomfort comes, the mind sees the part it is accidentally creating turmoil in and knows how to stop. That very ability to stop is the key. In every moment of stopping, the mind no longer increases unconscious participation. Not participating unconsciously means not creating more conditions that make the present heavy. When not piled upon, the present becomes as light as a leaf, and in that lightness, the mind begins to see deeper. It sees that every experience, whether sensation, thought, or state, is formed from many combined factors. A part comes from circumstances, but the rest comes from the present intention. When that intention becomes clear, not pushed by habit, the mind becomes naturally centered. This is the foundation to enter into the deepest expansion the text mentions. When the practitioner clearly sees every stage of participation, sees clearly how the mind creates layers of reaction and knows how not to participate in them, then the mind can begin to stop all participation. Stopping here is not forcing oneself to fall into emptiness. It is the gentle letting go of one who has clearly seen the entire structure, seen where participation begins, seen its operation, and seen that they no longer need to continue maintaining it. When that participation stops, a space is revealed. This space is not an absence, but the silent fullness of a mind no longer pulled by reactions. It is right there that the text points to the capacity to open the heart to receive beyond the process of birth and death. This is not expressed in images or concepts, as the text does not provide any description other than emphasizing that the practitioner must be skillful and how they participate in the present before they can go further. That capacity is a necessary condition, a preparation, a place where the mind matures to be able to let go of everything it once thought it had to hold onto. When this skill matures, the mind stands before the present without adding any push to it. It does not shove, does not pull, does not erect a shell of tension. And when those movements are gone, the present becomes whole. That wholeness is where the mind can clearly see the nature of everything happening. No longer obscured by old habits, the mind sees to the very root of the process, sees where past habits slip in, sees where present participation is active, and sees the ability to stop before creating a new loop. When this capacity becomes natural, without effort, the mind can step into a new openness, an openness no longer conditioned by emotions or thoughts, an openness that can only be accessed by one who has learned to participate very skillfully, and then from that very skillfulness, knows how to let go of the entire process. This is the end point the text aims for. Before reaching ultimate freedom, one must understand how they are shaping the moment. When understood clearly, the mind knows how to stop, and in that stopping, the present becomes bright, light, and no longer binding.